Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. On today's episode, we're going to talk with actor and magician Rich Manley. He has a new series called Culture Shock, Bridging Cultures Through Magic. It'll be debuting on the Tubi channel this October. He has also appeared in movies like Fallen Cards with James Caan and Night of Day with Tom Cruise. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us. Also, I'd like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself or as a gift for someone you care about. A live 15-second call is $19.95 and a live 30-second call is $29.95. So give it a try. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Rich. Hello, Rich, and welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So, at what age did you become interested in magic?
I started at 10 years old. My grandfather was a magician, so he taught me the sleight of hand skills when I was that age. But I wasn't very good, obviously, because my hands were so small. So I was constantly making mistakes, but I was always persistent and wanted to impress him. So he was my inspiration for magic.
So, you know better than anybody what a difficult career magic is to pursue. Tell me about some of the obstacles. Were they primarily, manual dexterity obstacles, learning and rehearsing endlessly to master things? Or were there other obstacles that people don't realize when it comes to pursuing a career in magic?
I think ideally the biggest thing is the obstacles are I think your own self-doubt, because a lot of times you go into doing magic and you perform for people and you're always worried that you're not good enough or they're going to figure out what you're doing. And a lot of people I think get into magic because they've seen it on TV and they're fascinated by it and fascinated by the wonder and the mystery of it all. And then when you get to perform for people, you realize that there's a lot more mechanics involved, where you have the sleight of hand and the physical aspect of it, but there's a lot of mental aspect of it too. When you're performing for somebody, it's a lot of psychology, performing for that individual or group, and also for yourself. You have to be able to manage the fear of failure. If you mess up, if you do a trick wrong, a lot of times it's okay, but you tell yourself, oh my God, they know what I did, they saw what I did. And it's more of, okay, if they did see what you did, it's about improvising and working off of that and then using that to your advantage and then doing a different trick. Because the thing is, nobody ever really knows what you're doing. You're the only one that knows the trick, how it's supposed to go down. So if you mess up, it's okay, and you just change it to something else.
So we assume that you spent a lot of years rehearsing the physicality of various tricks and illusions, and at some point you're out in public somewhere. Maybe it's on a street corner, maybe it's on a stage, and you're performing in front of your first audience. What was that like? And what was the first trick or illusion you did for people that you didn't know, that weren't family?
It was well, I actually started working in a restaurant, and so a lot of it was restaurant magic. And the first trick was for I can't say I per se know the first trick I did, but I do know the first experiences. And working with those people, working with people who were in the restaurant, it was something, like I said, where I was constantly saying to myself, okay, I have to get this perfect. This has to be a perfect trick. And I did mess up a few times, and people would say, "Oh, you're so cute, nice try," and you walk away with your head held down, saying, "Oh, well, that was not so good." But then I think as you progress and as I did more magic, I sort of started doing it more for the entertainment value of what it was, rather than being so focused on this is the exact way I have to do these things. And I think as I got older and as I did a lot more magic, I honed the basic skills. So I felt more comfortable in just practicing and rehearsing. So I think that's really important. again, to manage that fear of, oh, I messed up. You know.
So you're simultaneously pursuing careers as both an actor and a magician, both very, very difficult paths. Which career path do you think is more difficult?
Um, well, that's a tough one. I would say, oh, they both have their well, with magic. So I will say this: with magic, you can do that anywhere. So one great thing about being a magician is that you can be in a restaurant. Now, this is actually a story. I was in a sushi restaurant. I met my business partner, who I work with now, by simply just having sushi and doing magic for the sushi chefs, and they would give me sake shots and free food, and I'd be doing magic for them. But I think that's where it differs from acting, whereas you can show your personality, you can do magic anywhere. When it comes to acting, you really need a camera on you or a stage to really be able to do it. So I think acting's probably harder because you just need more people to rally around you and say, "Oh, okay, we want to put him in front of the camera. We've seen his audition tape. Yeah, he's the guy." I think there's just so many more levels and layers to acting and getting the role than there is for a magician, where if you're confident enough, you can walk into a room and just perform.
And also, I think that you're more in control as a magician than you are as an actor, because as an actor, you're waiting for the phone to ring. But as a magician, you control the amount of effort you put in, the skills you develop, the hours, all of that. I think there's more control there.
Yes, yeah, and that's a big thing for me. Is I like being in control of what I'm doing. It just allows me to focus more on honing the skill and honing the craft. So yeah, it's much more of an in control thing, and for me, I'm that kind of person that likes that.
So I've seen some of your magic, your illusions, your sleight of hand tricks. Give me a sense for, have you ever heard of the rule of 10,000? The rule of 10,000 says that you probably have to spend 10,000 hours to really master a sport or a musical instrument or whatever you want to pursue excellence in. It seems to be that 10,000 is the threshold. Do you have a sense for how many man hours or years it took you to get really good? Because your illusions are really slick. They're very high level and they're slick. How many hours of practice, how many years of practice does it take to develop that kind of manual dexterity?
I Wow, I would spend hours in my room just performing for myself. I would have a deck of cards on me everywhere that I went. So I think it's just something that I was always a kid who had a hard time sitting still. I think this is why I also got into acting, because I was creating characters. I was always needed something to do, and I got into martial arts as well because I couldn't sit still. And so for me, a way of coping with that was to carry a deck of cards with me wherever I went. So if I was in the car with my parents when I was younger, or even now, when I had my own car, I would have one hand on the steering wheel and I'd have a deck of cards that I was cutting and shuffling while I'm driving. And I just always had cards in my hand. So whether I'm in a meeting or at an airport, I'm playing with the cards, I'm shuffling them, I'm doing moves, I'm doing sleights, and not really thinking about it. So I'm not sitting there and just saying, "Oh, I got to get this perfect." I'm just casually doing it. So I think that's a very true statement of putting in those hours. But you also have to enjoy it too. If it's something that you don't enjoy, and you're just putting in the hours, you'll never be truly good at it. And truly, I guess the word is slick. If you don't love it, you have to really kind of have an affinity for it.
So, like everybody else, we've seen some of the David Blaine specials. And, when he does street magic, or even if you watch his videos on YouTube, when he does street magic with people 3 feet away from him, watching his hand movements and watching the illusion, it is so slick, so fast that you almost think that it's CGI, that they're only doing this because it's on television and they can fool the home audience with CGI and special effects without revealing anything. What is your sense for that, that level of magic? Is it really mechanical most of the time, or are they doing something back in post? Back in the video?
Well, there's There's a little bit of a combination of the two. Whenever you're filming magic, it's it's both easy and difficult. You wanna film the actual performance, and the magician, whoever is doing it, needs to be very very dialed in. A lot of the times when you're doing it without cameras, it's psychology based. So if I know there's somebody watching my hands, and I'm talking to somebody over here, and there's somebody watching me in this direction, most of the time I will talk to the person that's engaged and then divert my attention to the person that's really watching me and say, can you pick the card? Because at that moment, now their gaze comes up. And so whatever it is, if I have them pick a card here, now this person's engaged over here, this person is now engaged. So you always have to read the room of who's watching where and be able to control that. So when it comes to filming, there's always a camera on your hands. There's always, normally it's 3 or 4 cameras. There's a camera on your hands, a wide angle for the whole picture, for the whole audience and the performer. And then you have another camera on their reaction, so you can see what people are doing. And then you may have a camera, another one that kind of just flip-flops to different shots. So it does come down to, when you're editing it, obviously you want to edit around where that camera that might be on the hands the whole time is not in that particular edit. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but you are performing for these people. So you are getting genuine reactions, genuine, whoa, this is amazing. So you still need to be at the top of your game when you're doing it.
So I've got a hypothetical question for you now. Let's just say that you put on a fake rubber nose and some sunglasses and a hat and flew out to Vegas and sat down at a card table. I don't know if you're a gambler, if you've ever gambled or not. I don't know if you know how to count cards or not. Do you think you're good enough to sit down at a table and hypothetically to cheat and make very serious money without the cameras or the dealer noticing? Does your skill rise to that level, or is that difficult to say?
Well, I don't count cards. If I could, I probably would be better at it. I'm actually not a very good gambler. I do go to Vegas, and when I go, I tend to go to Red Rocks and mountain bike or rock climb, because I never was good at gambling. But I did have a friend who told me, he's a magician, who told me a story of, and now I always watch this when I'm at the tables. He used to do this little con at the casinos, and he was a magician, very good, but he would always put his hands here and cup his hands like this. And the reason for that is because a lot of times that's palming a card. So he would do this motion, and he would come down and do this and pretend like he had a card in his hand, but he didn't. So he was, in essence, basically baiting the managers to come over. So he would be here, and they said, "Sir, can you please show me your hand?" And he would say, "Why would I show you my hand?" And he would cause a big scene to them, saying, "This is unethical," And then it got to the point where they would physically grab his hand and put it down, and he had nothing in his hand. And he said, "I demand, to see the manager, this, and that," and then they would give him a free room. So it was kind of his way of, and he was a magician, so he knew what they would look for a lot of the times. And that story, it got me, because now I would always look at the casino whenever I was on the floor and say, okay, I'm going to see if I can see anyone trying to hold out cards or anything. But it's very difficult, because they have their house cards, and it's difficult to cheat at any kind of game in the casinos.
So tell me, what's harder, tricking an audience with an illusion or coming up with an illusion that hasn't been seen before?
I think it's probably coming up with an illusion that hasn't been seen before. Although if you can imagine it, you can do it. For instance, if I say, okay, I want to jump out of an airplane blindfold with my hands behind my back, and the parachute's falling and I'm falling, and I have to get out and grab the parachute. So that's in a kind of an escape illusion. And so the idea is, I think of the idea and I say, okay, this is the dream, so to speak. And now, knowing all of the the elements that I know as a magician of how to get out of an escape, how to perform the illusion, or all the basics. I now incorporate those, may talk to other magicians too and say, okay, this is the idea. How do we use the method to achieve that? So I think you have to have a creative mind to come up with different illusions, but you use a lot of the basics of magic to make it happen. Fooling the audience, that's easy if you have good stage presence and you're just really dialed in on your skill.
Is the fact that a lot of magic secrets are now being disclosed on YouTube, is that making it harder to be a magician these days because they're just splashing all these secrets across the internet?
I I don't think so, because I personally, for me, I've seen a lot of it, and I say, well, that challenges a magician. At this point, there has to be a new caliber of magician. You can't do the same old tricks anymore, and you have to become more creative with your ideas. So if somebody's doing the same trick over and over again that used to get people, now you have to come up with something different that maybe uses the same principles and just evolve. So I don't think it's something that's a hindrance. I think it maybe is something that's getting more people interested in magic because they know how it's done, and they say, oh, I want to go out and do that for people. And for the magicians that want to reach a higher level of performance, they now have to just become more creative with what they're doing.
Historically speaking, who are your favorite magicians?
I never really was into historical magicians. I think the probably the more modern, like David Blaine, really got me interested in magic. My grandfather was the catalyst showing me my first trick, but David Blaine was kind of the guy that got me really interested in going out and performing for people on the street, anywhere, and using whatever they had on them or that he found, and just doing something miraculous. And I think he was the guy that really I kind of looked up to.
Did you spend a lot of time doing street magic for the public before your career went to the next level?
Yeah. A lot of it was street magic. I'd go to different corporate functions, or like I said, at bars or restaurants or meetings and gatherings. Even outside, I grew up in Boston, so I would go out into the city and do magic for people. In my college, I would do the same thing. So a lot of how I honed my skill was just going out and doing magic for people.
So, as a highly skilled magician, when you watch other magicians in person, online, or maybe you attend one of their shows, are you able to tell how they're doing, what they're doing, or is it just too difficult because they're just that good?
Yes, I can. It actually surprises me sometimes because I'm expecting to see something that I can't figure out. I went to a Copperfield show, and he was doing some levitations, and I was like, oh, I know how he's doing that one. But I will say some of the illusions and things that are more creative in terms of they're not traditional, and they're kind of a new age kind of illusion where that magician is taking their own mind and creating something. Those ones I tend to have a hard time figuring out, because I can say, all right, there's a couple of methods of how this individual achieved it, but I'm not sure which method they used. And then there's rare times where I'll look at somebody and say, not sure how they did that, but I'll have an inkling or an idea.
How much money do you estimate it takes to mount a major show or a major tour for somebody like David Copperfield or Chris Angel, and then just roll it out across the country? Do you have a sense for what their budgets are?
They're probably very, very expensive. An illusion can sometimes be upwards to $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, depending on the prop piece, the set construction, and the assistants involved, and everyone that's doing the rehearsals and then renting out the space. So it can be hundreds of thousands to really perform something like that.
What is your goal? Is it to develop a huge act and have a residency in Vegas, or would you prefer a nationwide tour? Where is the money better at this point?
I would say for me, the big thing that I'm most interested in is using my magic to it's more of a travel based thing, which goes into the show that we're working on. I enjoy using magic to bridge cultures, to communicate with other people throughout the world, and use it as a sense of saying, oh, this is a part of me, this is something I love, this is something I enjoy, and then they are able to share something with me. So it's kind of for me a calling card saying, this is me, this is Rich, this is what I do. Allow me to entertain you, and in return, I would love to learn something about your culture, something about you. And this has happened in the Amazon when I've been there. This has happened over in China, Africa, and it's a great way for me to communicate. In terms of making a magician a career for myself, that's never something that really came into my mind. I never wanted to have a Vegas show or anything where I was a performing magician on stage. It was more of something that it was a way for me to intimately communicate with people and talk to people.
So everybody knows about the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, and I've always wondered why they never opened it up to the public. I think it's usually just for magicians, isn't it? Do you have any idea? Have you ever been there? You know, what's the story with that place? I think it would be a gold mine if they opened it up to the public, but for some reason they don't.
Yeah, it's I performed there a few times, and so that was a great experience. And they do have the dress code, so you have to be dressed up, and they also, you have to be invited. So you're invited by a member, a magician member, or somebody who's part of the castle. And I think if they could open it up, but I think part of the mystique that they like to keep is that it is a very private club, and they want to keep that very traditional sense of you need to be invited to view the magic. They like to keep everything very very closed door, and the magic is really high end. The performers take a lot of their time to hone their skills, and so they want to keep it as if it's an honor to be there. And so I don't think they'll probably change that policy anytime soon.
Is it a for-profit business, or is it just some rich magician who invites all his friends every week and they hang out and they do magic? What's the story in there?
Well, you get so you can receive a membership at the Magic Castle, and you can pay for just a regular membership, and that means you can go at any time. So technically, you don't have to get invited. If you decide you want to become a member, you can pay and become a member of the castle. And those are non-magician members. And then there's magician members who are magicians who perform at the castle, and they have a magician membership. And so basically anybody with the membership has passes they get, and they can hand them out and say, oh, you're welcome to come. And these passes normally allow that individual to take 3 people or 4 people with them. And so that's kind of how the process works. And then you go and view shows.
So let's talk about the film business. Because of recent events, it's been a bit slower than usual this year. Are you seeing a slight uptick now in film and television production, or are things still as they were a month or 2 ago?
Things are slowly opening up, but I think people, especially distributors and networks, are again still looking for content. It's a big game right now for content, and anyone who has content to give and sell. It's still slow, though. It's still a tricky thing. I think it's probably going to be that way until next year.
So you've got a new show coming out on Tubi this fall called Culture Shock, Bridging Cultures Through Magic. Tell us about that.
So again, that earlier when I was discussing using magic to bridge cultures, that's really what I find the most appealing with magic. So the show follows my journey, but it follows my journey based on my grandfather's journey. And again, he's the one that taught me magic, but he was a surgeon as well. So backing up, he learned magic as a surgeon because in the 40s, they taught surgeons magic so they'd be better with their hands and their finger dexterity. So he learned sleight of hand. And he also traveled around the world keeping a travel journal of everywhere he went because he was trying to incorporate holistic healing and spiritual practices into his own medical knowledge, and then bring that back to the States. And he documented places he went in Peru, in the Amazon, in Africa, in Tibet, meditation over there. And when he passed, he gave me this journal. And part of the story is me looking through the journal, seeing everywhere he went, all the indigenous people that he's visited, and how he used his magic to communicate with them and learn their medical practices. The show follows me following that journal to the different countries he went to, adventuring along the way, climbing mountains, going through whitewater rapids, scuba diving, and all this crazy adventure to get to that place. And then once I'm there, I perform magic for the indigenous people or the culture there, and then they show me their traditions and the things that they do within the community.
Tell me about the process of creating the show and getting it on the air. Did you kick around a lot of ideas before you came up with this concept? And how did you shop it around? Who helped you with that process?
Well, we did actually. I never planned on doing the show. I went to Egypt it was years ago. I went with this this friend of mine. His name's James Houston, who is the co-host with me on the show. And he was a good friend of mine for 10 years and a producer as well in Hollywood. And so I went to Egypt with him, and we went to Khan el Khalili, which is a bazaar in Cairo. It's a very famous area. And I love Egypt, so I wanted to collect just artifacts and bring them home. And I had my cards on me. I had a few tricks lined up, and everybody's heckling you. They're all saying, "Oh, buy this, you know," and they're trying to get you to buy everything. And so I said to James, there was this older gentleman, and nobody was buying anything from him. And I said, "Look, James, why don't I just try to do something for him? I'm going to do a magic trick." And I gave him my camera, and I said, "Can you just film this?" And he said, "Yeah." So I did the trick for this guy, and soon enough, all these people started conglomerating around us, and there was about 50 people just huddling, pushing their way, trying to see what was going on. And after I did the magic, they looked at us very differently. They started calling us brother. They were welcoming me into their home to have tea and talk with them, and they were discussing Egyptian history and even pulling out artifacts that were not for sale to show us, and they wanted us to be part of their community. And it was eye-opening. It was like a 180 from a tourist to now being very much a part of the community. And I went back to the hotel room with James, and I said, this is a very fascinating phenomenon here, that, magic has a way of bringing people together, but changing the perception of the person who's doing the magic. So after I went back to the States, I said, okay, James, maybe there's a way we can turn this into a show. And that's when I looked at my grandfather's travel journal, and I said, well, this is perfect. We can use the journal and travel to these remote regions and do the same thing we did in Egypt and see if we can get the same effect by performing for people and seeing how it changes their attitude toward you. And it worked miraculously. So we shot our pilot episode in Peru, lots of adventure and meeting tribes deep in the Amazon and a shaman. And we climbed the Andes Mountains and met the Quechua people. And then we shopped that around. My showrunner, Eric Recker, who works with Chris Angel, has jumped on board too. And we got a deal with Tubi TV. And so then the rest is history. Now it's going to be released on Tubi.
I saw some of the clips from the show. And that's the first thing I noticed, is what an incredible icebreaker the magic is. How it just warms everybody up, and suddenly they start smiling and engaging. It's really a magical sort of thing, no pun intended.
Yeah. No, it really is.
How many episodes in the first season?
There is going to be 10 episodes in the first season.
And how many countries or cultures did you visit?
Every episode's a different country. So there'll be 10 countries there. And then the cultures, it's really dependent. In Peru, it was the Quechua, and then in the Amazon, in Puerto Maldonado, it was the people of Palma Real. So Some episodes have two different cultures, that we go to depending on the region. If they're more mountainous or if it's desert, they're desert. In Namibia, it was the Himba tribe. So you have the Himba in Namibia, and there was a lot of traversing sand dunes and everything else to get to them. In Ethiopia, there's Omo Valley, and there's a bunch of different tribes in Omo Valley. That's the southern part of Ethiopia, so it's full of different people and tribes. And then northern Ethiopia, you have more pastoralists, which is a totally different cultural experience up there. You have churches that are cut into rock, and it's a very different look.
So you worked on a movie called Night of Day with Tom Cruise.
Yes.
And that is a really clever movie. I think it doesn't get the attention that it deserves because it is so clever and entertaining and charming, and the action is great. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, that was great. That was my first feature film that I did, and I played Danny, who is the firefighter and also the husband to Maggie Grace. And
wait. You're the guy that Tom met. Were you the guy that Tom met in the restaurant?
Oh, no. That's I forget his name. Something Bluth, I think, was his name, but that's not. I'm not that. I didn't get to work with Tom on this.
Okay. What scene were you in?
I'm with Cameron Diaz and Maggie Grace. We're getting married. There's stuff on the plane too, so I'm in that area.
Okay. Yeah, so was that the biggest budget movie you've done thus far?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I would have to say that probably is. Yeah, that's the biggest one.
Cameron Diaz is another great comedian who people don't think of as a comedian. She's really good.
She is. And when we were working together, off set, she'd make some comments to me. She was pretty funny, when the cameras weren't rolling. So,
how long did your scene take to film?
We shot that scene in about I think it was 2.5 days. We did that, and then we had a lot. I mean, Maggie Grace and I had a lot of interaction in there. We did some dancing. What bummed us out is that a lot of Maggie's scenes and my scenes got cut from the original movie, and when we watched it, we were like, oh, man, that's too bad.
Tom just doesn't get. Yeah, I wish his movies got. They're tremendous box office successes, and everybody who talks about Tom, I haven't done business with him, I have not met him, but everybody I talk to who has say the same thing: an unbelievable, superhuman work ethic, great personality, very likable. But you look at a movie like Night of Day, and it really deserves more impact, more attention than it's gotten, because every time they replay that movie on cable, it's just as impressive as the first time you see it.
Yeah. No, it was a fun movie. It's something different than, because it had those comedic elements. It's something different than what Tom normally does. I just thought it had a certain heart to it. It was so it was great.
Yeah. So we have a lot of business people and investors in our audience. If some investor came up to you and said, listen, we're going to give you X number of dollars, and then he said, with this money, you can do one of two things. You can film a Netflix special, or you can produce a nationwide tour or a major act somewhere. Which option would you choose and why?
So it's a Netflix special or a tour?
Or a tour.
That's a tough one. I would say the Netflix special, because for me, I enjoy the art of filmmaking. Tours are great, but again, I'm the live shows I'm not so keen on. I love just being there. I always equate the journey to a National Geographic type of journey, because it's so much a journey of self-discovery for the viewer, as well as it is for me. So a lot of the people that will watch this get to have an experience through the experiences I'm having with these people, and hopefully they can learn something from this. And I think there's just a lot more. There's a lot more to be learned if this was if we're doing a Netflix special, and a lot of the things that I want to do in terms of bringing other cultures and bringing this travel in remote regions to light, and some of the environmental issues happening and impacting the world. I think you can get a lot more in filming that than the live shows. Although I will say the live shows are probably more lucrative. I would pick the Netflix special.
When does your show debut?
It'll be in the. It's actually going to be very soon. It's going to be the end of the second week of October.
Oh, okay. All right. So before we wrap things up, is there anything else you would like to promote or tell us about that you may have coming up?
No, just the show we're shooting now, the second season. So it's Culture Shock, and you can check out all the updates on www.cultureshockmagic.com. And then a lot of the adventures that I go on personally is expeditionrich.com. And those are just the side adventures that I do. And then my Instagram has a lot of the photos that I take along the way, and that's just Rich C. Manley.
So listen, Rich, it's been a pleasure having you on the John Ark Show. I want to wish you the best of luck with all your projects going forward. And you're always welcome back on the show.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.